It started around 1994 or 95. I lived in an apartment with several friends, and we were all poor mid-20s guys. I was trying to become a screenwriter. Some of the guys worked, others were just doing drugs and partying all the time. It was a pretty submersive group, to the point where later on in our renting, this old beige phone we were using would occasionally half ring once, and we assumed it was a police infinity tap. They used infinity taps to listen to you through your own phone. This part of the story is important for later. I was dating a girl who was into occult stuff, serial killers, and other red flag type things. One day, she brought a Ouija board over to play with. We all played on it and had some laughs. When we were finished, it was left under my bed to stay. Shortly thereafter, the girl started telling me she was hearing scratching sounds on her walls back at her house. She was a wannabe actress, always messing with occult stuff, and totally flaky. I didn't know what to think of it. I was just like, okay. Then, things started happening to me. The bed would shake when I was sleeping, until I woke up. It was just like someone was standing at the foot of the bed and pushing it back and forth rhythmically. It happened quite often, once even when I was just laying there trying to sleep. Something would also slowly pull the covers off me at night. That is a weird sensation to wake up to. There's a thought process you go through where you don't want to be exposed, but also don't want to let the thing know you're awake. I would try to nonchalantly anchor the cover so it wouldn't go any further while laying there, hoping for it to stop. It was such an ever-slow tugging. A couple of weeks into this, I took the Ouija board and threw it in the dumpster, but it didn't help much while we were there. After moving out, things were way calmer until I bought a house. I still have the same bed that used to shake in my master bedroom, but I've never slept in it again. And yes, it's because I think it might start shaking again. I sleep in the living room on a couch in front of a giant TV, which at this time was against the far wall. It's way heavier and not going to sway at all. The back of the couch faced the kitchen and dining room in an open first floor layout. The master bedroom is above the living room where I sleep. Now, alone in my house, waves of events start building up. It started with the basement door behind the couch swinging open a couple of times. The blanket pulling resumed while I was on the couch sleeping. There were events of sleep paralysis where I would fight to scream and pray until I gained full control of my body. Often, I would start to get a tingling, full-body physical sensation, followed by a wave of terror. This could coincide with blanket pulling. The first big event peak culminated in me seeing something that I can only describe as looking like an explosion in an old World War II film floating around my TV. It was a dark, cloudy eruption about the size of a saucer. That was the first time I had actually seen anything, but it wasn't the last. My cats also seemed affected. I had 3 cats, but only one at a time. They have all done the same 2 things. I had a big round papasan chair next to the couch, which the cats all used as their bed. During event build-ups, they would jump up out of a dead sleep, like something pinched them. Then they would examine the bed before laying back down. The thing that really freaked me out with the cats was that they have each sat on my lap while on the couch, looked up at the ceiling behind my shoulder, and stared at something. Then they would meow at it. I would look and see nothing. The worst wave of events was the second most recent. It started building up with the usual night terrors. This time I started having crazy nightmares as well. Crazy demonic stuff, like nuns praying in hell. I also saw what I thought was a fist-sized black spider on my ceiling, just over my head one time. Spiders freak me out. As soon as I saw it, it let go and dropped, and I flew off of the couch to a standing position in milliseconds, but there was nothing there. For the peak event, I woke up on the couch in the middle of the night. I looked up on the ceiling above the back of the couch. Floating on the ceiling was a blacker-than-black torso-sized mass. It was dark in the room, and that thing was black. There was no chance I was asleep at this time, and I did a double take. It was there. I was completely freaked, but I acted like I didn't see it. I just closed my eyes, turned my head into the back of the couch. Then, I felt the back of the couch push into my face, and the wooden frame of the couch started creaking as the pressure was applied to make that happen. Something was pushing on the couch. I started yelling and praying and letting that thing know I know Jesus was protecting me, like always. It stopped and left me laying awake for a long time. Since things were escalating so badly this time, I started looking for answers. I found two possible things to try without involving a priest. 1. More Jesus. You may laugh, but when you experience what is resembling a demonic attack, you start to get religious. I hung a couple of crucifixes up, and I would play the Bible on audio over YouTube when going to sleep. 2. Something I had been carrying with me might be cursed, haunted, or have an attachment. I had this old South American wooden cup with a face on it from my grandmother's travels. I threw that out. My mum, who is also into occult stuff, had given me these weird art masks to hang on the walls. One was a freaky looking cow face that was supposed to bring prosperity. I trashed those. Anything from a source that seemed occult had to go. I even threw out a cross I had bought myself because it was Celtic looking. Things died down for a while. It seemed that it might have been that cow mask after all. Then I started hearing this ringing sound. It happened before, but not this often. It sounded like someone was hitting my doorbell for a split second. I would go and answer the door, and no one would be there. I thought it was neighborhood kids, until one time it happened during the day, after a security camera had been installed. Nothing was on the video recording. The random, one sickly ring kept happening, waking me at night. Finally, I realized the sound was coming from over my head in the master bedroom. I went up there and started digging through old boxes of junk for more stuff to throw out. What was found in the master bedroom closet made my blood run cold. It was the old beige phone from 25 years ago that used to randomly ring for just one time in that group apartment. I had it with me all this time. It was unplugged, with the phone line wrapped around it, in a box, but that ringer was exactly what I had been hearing. I had no idea what the history of the phone was before it appeared at the apartment 25 years ago, but it was going to end in the city dump. It rode with me to work the next day, where it was thrown into a dumpster. It was too uncomfortable to put in my own trash. I did consider setting it next to me and answering it the next time it rang, but it is a bad idea to invite contact, and also, no way, man. It's been probably 6 months since the phone was trashed. Nothing has happened since. It would be weird if an old phone was the focus of all of this. I'm hopeful this was finally the last of it, but it comes and goes in waves. This could just be the latest low point. On Halloween 2017, some friends that I regularly play with online decided to come visit, so we could all finally meet in person. We rented an Airbnb in the city and got all dressed up in our costumes and went out dancing. Everything was completely normal. Everyone was in great spirits and seemingly having a blast. So fast forward to the early hours of the morning, and I decided to break out my Ouija board. At this point, I should note that I've had paranormal experiences quite regularly my entire life. the majority being things like sensing what I call bad juju in certain areas of buildings, or feeling a presence that makes my blood run cold, and the more serious, like hearing and seeing actual apparitions or having visions of things before they happen. That being said, at this point, I had never been able to get any sort of activity to manifest itself in a Ouija board, not once. So, fearlessly, I brought out the board and proceeded to skeptically commune around it with my girlfriend and my friend Vanessa. Everyone else in the house was asleep by this point. Vanessa took the reins as our guiding voice as we all meditated around what I knew would be nothing more than a board game. We all focused on shielding ourselves with a protective spiritual bubble, while coaxing the passing spirits to commune with us on this Halloween night. Nothing. 10 minutes pass. The planchette flicks back and forth a few times. I silently think that that's just Vanessa or my girlfriend moving it. We ask questions, all of which receive no direct answers. About 20 minutes into this game, I mentally focus on removing my bubble shield. I mentally call out to the void, saying nothing aloud, challenging whomever is listening to come to me. My blood is running cold and my eyes watering just telling this story. Something came to me. I really can't describe it, but it was instantaneous. "Whoa," said the girls. They had felt it. I couldn't believe it. Their immediate reaction solidified that what I was feeling was not my imagination, but something very real. I trembled as Vanessa said, "Is something or someone with us?" Now I know what I'm about to say might sound bizarre, but just bear with me, because it's kind of hard to explain what happened next. It felt like this thing dipped a tendril or a finger into my mind, just like we might dip a toe into a bath. I instantly felt its power, and it was the most powerful energy I've ever experienced. It felt like I was tapped into an army of beings, or perhaps an entire dimension. It was unfathomable. It made me feel as if I could devour the entire universe, if so pleased. It told me its name was Abaddon. It didn't say it verbally. It was more like it wrote it out letter by letter inside my head. I was terrified. I felt like my body wasn't vast enough or strong enough to house this thing's pinky finger. I felt overwhelmed. "What is your name?" Vanessa asked. The planchette moved and spelled out A, B, A, D. At this point, tears were streaming down my cheeks, and I said, "Abaddon." The girls both looked at me. "Its name is Abaddon. It told me about 5 seconds before you asked." At this point, I told the girls that we were not safe, and we implored the entity to move on from us. We said goodbye, per Ouija board etiquette, and I stumbled into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of bourbon. The girls ran in after me to see how I was. My girlfriend knows me very well, and she instantly could tell I was not alright. For one thing, I was shaking like a leaf. My chest felt heavy, and I couldn't really talk about it for some reason. "Is it still with you?" my girlfriend asked, to which I nodded my head. We immediately returned to the board and basically exorcised the entity. We sat in a circle, all holding hands. The entity ran through my hands and into the girls. They both felt it and started shaking. I immediately felt 1,000 pounds lighter and 20 degrees warmer. Eventually, we got it to leave us. We were all very exhausted by this, but could barely sleep after. Everyone else in the house was awoken by this commotion and could tell something very serious had happened. My agnostic friend said she was lying in the next room praying. She had felt and heard what we were experiencing. I don't know. The next day, I looked up Abaddon. This is what I found. The Hebrew term Abaddon and its Greek equivalent, Apollyon, appear in the Bible as both a place of destruction and an angel of the abyss. In the Hebrew Bible, Abaddon is used with reference to a bottomless pit, often appearing alongside the place, Sheol, meaning the realm of the dead. Side note, the next morning, we could see the lot beside the Airbnb for the first time since we had all arrived there at night. It was a graveyard. When I was growing up, my parents would occasionally tell me the story of the time they played the Ouija board. It was when they were dating before I was born, and they had a crazy night with it, where it answered all kinds of questions. There's one thing my parents are not, and that's liars, so these stories only intrigued me to find out for myself. When I was 17, I was a senior in high school, and I had my first serious boyfriend. We were both very curious to know if the Ouija board truly worked, so we bought one. My bedroom was in the basement, and we had set it up on my bed. It was close to midnight. We lit candles, turned the lights out, and sat cross-legged on the bed on each side of the board. We were supposed to pick a question and focus on it, with our index fingers lightly touching the planchette. The question we decided to ask was, will anyone talk to us? We must have sat there focusing on that question for about 40 minutes, occasionally shaking our hands out from them getting tired of being held in that position. After about 40 minutes, the planchette started to vibrate underneath our fingers. Then it slowly moved to the word yes. We stopped for a moment and looked at each other like, is this real? Then we asked, are you a spirit? And it moved away from the word yes and back to it. At this point, I noticed I could feel a strange electricity moving through my body. I didn't like it. I never felt it before or since. We decided to ask it, are you nice? And it very quickly moved to the word no. Now I'm riddled with terror. I exclaim that I cannot play anymore, and I go to pick the board up and put it back in the box, except the board will not move, not a sliver. It felt as though it was stuck there with cement. I remember yanking with my entire body at least 3 times before suddenly it felt as something got off the board and I flew backwards with it in my hands. I slammed it into the box and closed it. My boyfriend's face was pale. He tells me, I have to go home, and I'm like, oh my god, don't leave me here. But he leaves. Here's where it gets even more scary. After I walked my boyfriend to the door, I went back down to my room. Only, it didn't look like my room anymore. Don't get me wrong, nothing changed visually. It was still all my stuff. But I felt like I was in a parallel universe. I felt so far away from all that is comfort and good. I don't know how else to describe it. I'm not a religious person at all, but I was so beside myself with terror that I didn't know what to do except to grab a Bible. I slept with it in my arms with the lights on. I actually slept with the lights on for the next week. I did not tell my parents what I had done because I didn't want to get into trouble for playing with the Ouija board in the house, or for my boyfriend staying over way later than he was allowed because we played it when everyone went to bed. My room continued to not look or feel like mine for a couple of weeks. Also, when I would get up for school in the morning, I would have to walk through a dark basement living room to get to the stairs because there was no light switch by my bedroom door for the living room, and my bedroom door was in the back corner of it, so when I would first open my bedroom door, the light in my room would cast out into the living room darkness, and for a split second, I would see a black cat run from the patch of light into the dark. I would shake it off as my eyes playing tricks on me, but after a couple of weeks, I was eating breakfast upstairs with my family, and my 7-year-old sister exclaims out loud, I keep seeing a black cat in the basement. That confirmed that it was not a trick of my eyes. Also, about a month after playing with the Ouija board, my dad says to me, I don't know why, but the basement and stairs have really bad vibes, and it's bothering me because when I bought this house, one of the things I liked was that it had good energy. That's when I realized for sure, without a doubt, that all of this stuff was not in my head. I had haunted my parents' house by playing that game. I learnt after the fact that I was supposed to say goodbye before stopping the game. I think that had something to do with it. Another strange thing that happened. I always slept with my bedroom door locked. A few weeks after playing the game, I woke in the middle of the night to somebody jiggling my bedroom door handle violently. In the morning, I asked who was messing with me, but everyone acted like I was weird for asking. About 6 months after playing it, my stepmom was cleaning the house, found the Ouija board, and threw it away. Things started to calm down a little bit after that, but it took years for that basement to feel okay again. And honestly, it never went back to feeling the way it did before I played. I finally owned up to my dad and stepmom about what I had done. I wasn't in huge trouble, but my dad was like, I knew the house felt different, damn it. To this day, I feel bad for bringing that energy into the home. After that experience, I want absolutely nothing to do with Ouija boards, and they are not allowed in my home. I learned. I was raised Baptist and never allowed to have a Ouija board growing up, so after becoming atheist, I decided to buy one just for the fun of it, still believing that any movement would be a result of the ideomotor effect. I played around with it, not much happened, so I just put it back in the box and shoved the box under mine, my boyfriend's bed. 2 or 3 nights later, I woke up to what sounded like a violent scratching or clawing noise, and what felt like the bed shaking. And you know when you wake up because you think you heard something, you'll hold your breath so you can hear better in the silence. Well, that's what I did. I held my breath, terrified. And it was strange because it was almost waiting for me to let my guard down, because as soon as I exhaled and thought, phew, it was a dream, the scratching and clawing picked up again. It was so forceful, it was shaking the freaking bed with each scratch. So I obviously freaked the hell out and wake up my boyfriend who was sleeping next to me, while the scratching paused again. As soon as I shook him awake, he could tell I was terrified just by the look on my face. He started to ask what's wrong, and I shushed him and whispered, "Shh, listen, just tell me if you hear it too." And we're both sitting there in silence, and once again, it was as if it was waiting for our guard to lower, because as soon as my boyfriend said, "Hear what?" I don't hear. The scratching suddenly picked up 10 times harder, faster, and louder than it had before. My boyfriend was braver than I was. He immediately hopped out of bed, turned on the light while yelling, "What the hell was that?" And as soon as the light was on, it stopped. I immediately looked for a rational cause. I didn't have any animals at the time, no kids, no TV or radio on. We lived in a brick house, so nothing could get in the walls, and by ourselves in the suburbs, so no weird animals or anything. There was no explanation. My boyfriend looked under the bed. He looked all around the house. He even looked around the outside of the house, just trying to find some explanation, but there was nothing. So my boyfriend and I eventually get back into bed, and we snuggle up close, and then he reached over to turn the light off. We laid there, listening for any hint of movement. And of course, as soon as my boyfriend relaxes and says, "I think it's gone now," the scratching and clawing started picking up even more violently than before. At that point, we turned every light in the house on, and went and slept in the living room. The second experience occurred about a month after the first experience. My boyfriend was such a heavy smoker, he would literally wake up every few hours throughout the night to go outside on the back patio to smoke a cigarette. I'm such a light sleeper. I would often wake up when he went out to smoke, and then wake up again when he came in from smoking and crawled back into bed. It was probably around 2 a.m. or so, and I heard my boyfriend get up and out of bed. So I'm trying to fall back asleep, and I hear him put his shoes on. I hear him open and close the bedroom door. I hear his footsteps walking down the hallway. I hear him open and shut the hallway door. I hear him open and shut the back door. I hear the back screen door open and shut too. All totally normal. I don't know how much time passed. Probably not that long, because I never fell back asleep all the way. But maybe 30 minutes later, I heard the screen door open and shut again, along with the back door. I heard the door at the end of the hallway open and shut. I hear his footsteps walking down the hallway towards the bedroom, a bit heavier this time, as if he was stomping for some reason. Then, I hear our bedroom door open and shut. Normally, at this point I would be hearing my boyfriend crawl into the side of the bed, as he slept right next to the door, while I slept on the other side by the wall, with my back to the door. But instead, I hear him, still stomping, walk around the bed, and walk up my side, all the way to the desk, and stop right there, standing right in front of my face. My eyes were still shut, and I was still laying there on my side, facing where he was standing, but still trying to fall back asleep. I figured maybe he was putting his phone on charge, as the outlet is by my pillow, but I couldn't hear him messing with any phone charger. I don't hear anything. I suddenly felt like there was somebody just staring at me, watching me. But when the terrified thought crossed my mind, why is he just standing there in front of my face, doing nothing except watching me sleep? And I got this sinking feeling in my stomach when I hear a voice whisper my name and tell me to wake up. It almost sounded like my boyfriend, but the voice was deep and raspy and almost distorted. I opened my eyes, and despite hearing him walk in and open and close the doors and walk around to my side of the bed and stand there is no one there. But it gets creepier. I freak out, jumping out of bed and running down the hall to find my boyfriend. And once I turn a corner to go running through the living area where the exit to the patio is, I literally run into my boyfriend, like actually physically collide with him. Turns out, he was in the process of running inside to find me, while I was in the process of running outside to find him. Before I can even gather my thoughts to turn them into words, he goes, "Where were you? Are you okay? Did you hear it?" I don't know what happened. I came out to smoke, and I guess I must have fallen asleep in the hammock or something, because the next thing I know, I heard the patio door and screen door open and shut, and it half woke me up, so I was still half asleep, but I heard you walk up, and I felt you sit down on the hammock with me and put your hand on my leg. Then I heard you say my name, and then you yelled at me to wake up. And it sounded like you, but I knew it wasn't your voice. Then I opened my eyes. There was no one there, and I looked around and didn't see you, so I panicked. So, long story short, we both had the same unique experience at the same time in different areas of the house. Both of us thinking first it was the other person, only for us to realize, also at the exact same time, that no one was there. Which begs the question, who did both of us hear walking through the halls, patio, and bedroom if it wasn't either of us? The third experience is by far my favorite. It's more akin to a miracle. It occurred probably 5 months after the second experience. Since that happened, I had actually made a lot of progress on the Ouija board, and you could say I befriended the spirit in the house, Grio. It's a long story, but basically, I told it out loud. If you want to stay in this house, you can make all the noise you want in the daytime, but not at night, because it scares the hell out of me. Take it or leave it. And it worked. I worked hard to communicate over time and build a rapport of sorts with it, but those are stories for another day. The point is, this spirit was no longer terrifying us, and became more of a welcomed, although prankster, presence. But keep in mind, in my head, I still partially believed I was going insane, and that none of this was real. Imagination, mental illness, idiomotor effect, gas leak, brain tumor, something rational. The atheism was strong in me. Around this time, my boyfriend, who had been in long-term recovery from heroin addiction, ended up relapsing. I knew it, as I was in long-term recovery myself and knew all the signs, but he wouldn't admit it. I knew the only way he would admit it and go back to rehab is if I found evidence and confronted him with it. When he left for work one night, I knew it was a chance to find evidence. He would never take syringes to work with him, so I knew they had to be in the house somewhere. I searched for several hours, and I was frantic, but after finding nothing, I was in tears, sobbing, desperate. So I had an idea. In absolute desperation, still in tears, energy still very high, good for spirits, I pulled out the Ouija board. I thought, this is my last shot, here goes nothing, while also at the same time kind of viewing it as a test to see if my paranormal experiences were legit, or if I was somehow making them up in my own head. Once I contacted the prankster spirit, I asked if he had seen or would know the location of something my boyfriend had hid recently somewhere in the house, like perhaps a baggie or syringes. When the planchette again went to yes, I just broke down and said straight up, "Please, I need your help. I need to know where he hid those items so I can save his life. I swear to God, if you help me find those items, I will never ask you to find anything for me or do another favor for me ever again. Please, where should I look?" And I'll admit it, I felt like a crazy person, but to my surprise, it started to spell out a list of words. It spelled out basket, basement, trouser, laundry, fleece, sock, pocket. And then the energy died out. Again, the atheistic doubt in the back of my mind, thinking of the idiomotor effect, thought, that's a strange list for my subconscious to spell out. I don't even use the word trouser, and we don't own anything fleece. To skip the boring part, I searched for 90 minutes straight and was about to give up. But then, while in the laundry room of my basement, I saw a basket underneath the rocking chair that I hadn't noticed before. It was a box of pants, or you might say trousers, all belonging to my boyfriend. I dug through and got to the last pair of trousers in that basket under the chair in the laundry room of the basement. It was a pair of jeans, and in the pocket, I pulled out a fleece sock that I had never seen before, and wrapped up inside that sock, I found 2 syringes and several empty gel capsules. Once I saw that, a shiver went down my spine, because I realized everything was actually real. The truth of spirits and the afterlife had hit me in the face like a bunch of bricks. I wasn't just crazy after all. That was my proof that spirits were real, because I never could have known that. Not a single word was incorrect from the Ouija board. Like I suddenly got the most terrified feeling ever, just knowing that the spirit I talked to was real and was now certainly watching me make this discovery, watching me standing there, frozen in fear and awe and realization. As I looked around the basement, I thanked it. And yes, That discovery did propel my boyfriend and eventually fiancé into treatment. But unfortunately, in late 2017, my fiancé relapsed one more time and passed away. But thanks to that spirit, I got to spend a couple more sober years with him. Otherwise, I could have lost him before then. I'm dealing with the loss as best I can. I've never attempted to reach out on the Ouija board to my late fiancé because I know that could end badly, as it would make me vulnerable to deception, and no one ever wants to be vulnerable in any way when attempting spirit communication in any form. My sister Yvonne recently moved into an old apartment built in 1919, and my other sister Amanda and I went to visit her last weekend. Last Christmas I bought her a Ouija board because she's into occult stuff, but she had never used one before. So at her place, I asked if we could use the Ouija board because she doesn't really have anything else in her apartment yet. None of us believed in ghosts or spirits at the time, but having watched many horror movies and heard so many stories, we had respect for the board and did everything exactly how it was in the instructions. The second we all had our fingers on the planchette and Yvonne asked if anyone was there, it started to move. There was no hesitation at all, and it went to yes. We asked normal questions and eventually found out that 3 spirits were present: Tina, a 17-year-old, and Philip, a 19-year-old, who were in love, along with Brian, the 17-year-old brother of Philip. We asked how they died, despite the warnings online not to, but Tina was extremely friendly and didn't mind. I know this because we asked if we were bothering them. She said no. She said she was murdered. K-N-I-F-E was her exact answer. We also asked if she was killed by someone she loved, to which her reply was yes. Philip was also murdered by someone he loved, someone in his family. Without telling us, they would switch who was talking. We were asking about the murders and what had happened, and didn't realize we were talking to the brother until we asked who we were speaking with. We asked how he died. J-U-M-P was his response. We asked if he killed himself, to which he replied yes. We asked if he killed Tina and Philip, to which he again replied yes. We asked him why he did it. His answer was L-O-V-E. We also asked if he was still in love with her, and he went between yes and no. We asked if he wouldn't tell us because Philip was present, which was correct. Turns out, he was in love with Tina and killed them out of jealousy and then committed suicide. He regrets it though, so I don't think he's that evil. The year this happened was in 1957, and no bodies were ever found, and I was unable to find anything online. This didn't surprise me though, because Tina said that the killer was never caught, and their bodies never found. When we asked where they were killed, it pointed to the church next to my sister's house. Could also have meant the mountains behind it, because they're also right there. And it would make sense if Brian jumped to his death, that it was from the cliffs, and the bodies were never recovered. After that, we asked to speak to Tina again, and chatted a bit with her. We asked if we could talk to her again, and she said yes, so I guess we made a ghost friend. We asked if we could say goodbye now, and at first she went to yes, and then started doing really fast circles, so we all said goodbye. As soon as we all did, it stopped circling and moving on top of the board, so we took our fingers off. Honestly, the whole experience was positive for me. I did feel a slight presence for a few days later, but I think I'm fine. None of us are experiencing anything paranormal, although every night I either hear knocking on my door, my window, or scratching on the walls. 2 days ago, I saw a man in my garden walking towards my window, so I panicked and closed it and the curtains, and then heard someone knock on my window. The only thing that happened since that gave me shudders is I was driving and telling this exact story to my other sister, who was much younger. When I finished telling her about Brian, I noticed the license plate of the driver in front of us was the first half of Brian's name. This was an EU plate, so all the letters and numbers are random. I'm moving into an apartment that was built in 1945 next week, and I'm definitely getting my own board, so I can use it there as well. In short, my sister has 5 roommates, and only 2 of them are living. My parents often moved, every 2 years. I was 15 when we moved into a nice apartment near the town hall, but the last owner, an old woman, died alone in the living room. The neighbors called for firefighters after 2 weeks of not seeing her. One Saturday morning, my parents had left, so I was alone. I went to take a shower, but a few minutes after, I felt someone's hand grabbing my arm. I looked, and it was like water was flowing around the hand. I stayed calm and turned slowly as I said, "Bonjour, I'm from France." The feeling just vanished. I sure felt a little strange, but it wasn't fear. That person, or whatever it wasn't bad, and it never came back. But that was not the main paranormal event. I was 17, 18 soon, and my group of 5 friends thought it was a good idea to try a Ouija board one day. We were curious. It was a real experiment, so we researched for info on the internet to do it respectfully and safely. One night, we drew a Ouija board on paper. We took a glass, a GoPro, and we went outside, in the middle of an empty large green area with barely some trees. Our rule was to put our finger straight on the glass, so the touch could transfer energy, I suppose, but if someone was trying to trick us, we would have seen it. The first 15 minutes, we tried to summon a spirit, but nothing happened. One of my friends takes off his finger because his positioning is uncomfortable and he loses faith, so the 4 remaining continue to call for a spirit, and around 20 minutes, the glass begins to move by itself. It was very slow at first. Everyone thought that we were doing pranks on each other, but it began to move a little faster towards the yes. It's really hard to believe, even if it happens in front of your eyes. We asked for its name. It was Richard, and it took a while to get all the letters. I remember we asked from what door he was coming, but I can't remember the answer. Anyway, he said he wasn't bad. To prove that he was there, each of us asked a very personal question. I asked for the first letter of my mum's father's name, someone I never met, and I wasn't even sure of the answer myself. I had to check the day after with my mum to know that the spirit was right. So he was for me, and everyone else in the group. We asked if he had a link with someone, and he said yes. So we asked for the name of that person, and it happened to be me. He said that it was from my mother, and she actually had a friend named Richard that died years ago. After that, I don't remember well what happened. One thing that's clear is that when we wanted to end the session, one of my friends was asking about something he shouldn't have, and the glass began to speed up like crazy, answering the question and immediately going towards the goodbye. We left the Ouija paper and the glass and walked fast towards my friend's house. When we got back, people that didn't want to come wanted to see the video we took with the GoPro, and, well, for everyone, it was unexplainable. The next morning, I talked with my mother about it. She's not really religious, but she believes, so it wasn't hard. When I tried to show her the video, we saw the first 20 minutes, but as soon as it really begins, my computer just shut down. My mother said that she wasn't meant to see this, and I thought she was right, so I didn't try much after that. Everyone in the group split up after that, and I changed radically after that event, Going from a good pupil in high school to a lowlife at university, it's not the same anymore. There is a good chance it's just life, but maybe something held on to me after that. Maybe not, but it troubles me sometimes. A little backstory. My family is different. We were raised Christian, but a lot of the family did witchcraft. Not your typical witchcraft. Most of us either followed into it or put that aside. I believe in things that most don't, but I don't practice anything. My brother, on the other hand, went into it hard body. So with that being said, I must have been like 23 or 24. I was living with my brother and grandma. My brother at the time would leave the house and not come back for days. He had a massive DVD collection, and when I was bored, I would either pick his door, or if the key was available, I would use that. On this day, the key was there, so I go in, grab a bunch of DVDs, and lock the door because I didn't want him knowing I was in there. I watched like 2 movies, and I go to place the movies back in his room. I closed the door, locked the door, and when I locked it, I heard a sound and was like, what the hell? So I unlocked the door, and the door slammed into the closet doors. The way his room was, the door opens to the left. On the right of the door was his double door closet, so if the closet doors are open, he can't get out of the room. I thought maybe something fell in the closet, so I pushed one closet door closed and made my way in. I look around and realized there was nothing. I was like, whatever, close the door, exit the room, lock the door, and I heard the same noise. Thinking I was just being paranoid, I unlocked the door, and once again, the closet doors were open. I push one door closed and make my way in, looking around, only this time, I felt the coldest shiver ever in my life. I was like, screw that, I'm out. Exit the room, lock the door, and that's when I hear the closet door slam against the room door. Not gonna lie, it made me jump. I immediately run to my grandma and ask if he was there, and she replied no. I asked if she was sure, and she said yes. So now this is playing with my emotions. I unlocked the door, closed the closet door, go in. I'm like, bruh, stop playing with me. I know you're in here. Nothing. I start looking around. I look under the bed, and so I'm not scared if he jumps out. I yell, ha! There was nothing. I look behind the bed, behind the curtains. I open the closet door. I move some clothes around. Still nothing. I'm now convinced I'm lit and this is my imagination. I repeat the process. This time, I didn't lock the door. I run to my grandma, make her get out of bed, take her to his room. I tell her to listen. I lock the door, and the closet doors fly open, slamming against the room door. She's like, what was that? I tell her and explained what was happening. She said, well, he's in there. I push the door closed, take her in, show her the room, and she says something must have put pressure on the door. We exit the room, I lock it, and it happens again. I'm like, see? She turns, slaps me in the face, and says, keep that kind of stuff to yourself, and walks away. I push the closet door closed, go in, and say, whatever you are, you're not welcome here. I exit the room and lock the door, and this time I hear one closet door open. Curious, I open the door. The closet door furthest from the room door was open. I close it, and that's when his light turns off. Mind you, this whole time the lights were on. That scared the bejesus out of me. I turn them on, exit, lock the door. I hear it again. My dumb lit ass goes to look. Closet doors are open, lights off. I push in, close the closet doors and look in. The room was a lot darker, almost like you couldn't see anything, even with the light coming from the hall. I turn on the light and run out scared. I leave the door unlocked. Around 11 PM, my brother comes home. I rush to him, And I'm like, you want to see something creepy? He looks at me with this pale face and says, no. I say, well, you're going to anyway. I take him to his room, and he asks why the key is in the lock. I come clean and tell him the truth. I tell him to lock the door. He looks at me and says, I don't want to. I squint my eyes, not knowing he knows something. He makes a big fuss but locks the door. We both hear it, and he starts spilling the beans. He tells me that some voodoo guy he knows gave him an original Ouija board. He said since he got it, he was having nightmares and hearing things, so he left the house for days. I say, so you leave it in there and don't say anything? And he said he thought it was all in his head. He then takes it, and I thought he left with it. Instead, he puts it in another closet that has a skeleton key lock, doesn't say anything, leaves the house for another 5 days. He comes home and spends like 3 days in the house. For those 3 days, everyone is hearing doorknob jiggling, but we don't know where it's coming from. I ask him if he got rid of it right. He turns super slowly and says with a stupid look, no, I put it in the small closet. When he says that, we hear the doorknob jiggle harder. So we go to the closet, and you can see the doorknob moving. The thing with that closet is that there is no inside doorknob. I'm like, get in there and get rid of it. And he said he was scared, and what if it tries to eat me or take my soul? So I tell him, well, that's your fate. It is what it is. He takes it back to the old voodoo guy, and that's when the guy tells him that he found that Ouija board in the Amityville house in the late 70s or early 80s. After that day, my brother stopped doing his weird stuff and started going to church. To this day, every time I talk about it, I feel cold shivers and get goosebumps. I know I shouldn't play with a Ouija board, but I'm infatuated. There's a lot to unpack here, so let's start with a story my mother told me about her basement. Some context and history might be needed though. Once upon a time, my grandmother was insane. From my understanding, she always had problems with pills and such. It ended up being the death of her. Just before I was born, her apartment caught fire, the doorknob fell off, and she was too high to get out. My mum swears it's a murder case. My grandfather was a war vet and would whip the 5 children in the house relentlessly. You're probably wondering what that has to do with anything, and quite frankly, it's just so you can understand the setting that my mum grew up in. They didn't give a damn, and when they did, it was in the wrong way. My grandmother was super into Wiccan, black magic, witchcraft and all that. My mum said she was very Catholic religious as well, which, after some of the things that have happened to me, I don't blame her. Apparently, this rubbed off on her kids though, because 2 of the 5 also dabbled in such things, my Aunt Linda and my Uncle Carrie. My mum always tried to keep us as far away from the people she grew up with as humanly possible. Everyone who grew up in that house ended up terrible addicts or crazies. They first moved into the house in the 1970s, and it was the early 80s when the children lived in the basement. They would put the girls downstairs and the boys upstairs, since they tended to need more discipline. My mum says they used to have this chair in the bedroom. It didn't really have a purpose, and was typically just a catch-all for clothes that were still clean, or the occasional parent visiting their room. One night, when she was probably no older than 10, my mother and my aunt are waiting to fall asleep when Linda's voice cracks out in the silence. "Mickey, did you hear that?" Or something along those lines, I'm sure. Half awake, my mum takes the covers off of her head to see an angelic-looking woman sitting daintily on the now empty chair. She only ever described her as beautiful, but her tone of voice telling the story always gave me a sense that as beautiful as she may have been, every beauty can come off wrong, as if there were air quotes around the scene itself. My aunt began talking to the quote-unquote angel. My aunt is older than my mother. Maybe that's why she didn't feel a need to be afraid. My mother listened to this one-sided conversation, head under the covers. The first look was real enough that she wanted no part of it. She began to hear the angel start to address her. The angel asked why she's hiding, asked her to look, asked her to talk, etc. My mother said it felt like her gut was full of rocks. As she refused and ignored, the voice began to change. The angel was begging her, then it began telling her, then demanding, then screaming. My mother stayed under the covers and prayed, whilst Linda continued the conversation with the same woman, technically, but a different voice. My mum never spoke to it that night, and didn't see it as much as Linda did after that day. Linda, on the other hand, would chat with her many times after that night. When the girls' room moved upstairs, so did the angel. My mum to this day will not allow the room to be arranged a certain way. Meeting Linda as an adult was a trip. She had this small book and would go out onto the porch and read or pray out loud. She was a terrible addict and passed away from an overdose last year. Her daughter, who's very similar, left some of her ashes in a zippy bag on our porch. She's chilling on top of our china cabinet in the kitchen now. Rest her soul. My mum says Uncle Carrie got into devil worship at the house, sacrificing small animals and such. She said at some point it had gotten bad enough she would find hung kittens or catch him suffocating something or another. Absolutely insane stuff. She says between his worship and my grandmother's black magic, they had opened some sort of portal. I don't know how much of this I really believe. He died in 2011 from cancer at the age of 32. When my grandpa died from cancer in 2012, my mother was the only one of his children to take care of him in his last days, so he left the house to her. We had been renting and hopping around most of my elementary years, so my mum took it as an opportunity to save some money. She wanted to settle somewhere that wasn't her childhood home and didn't give her terrible PTSD. He officially died in the hospital, but his last days were spent in our living room in a hospital bed. I'm writing this in what used to be her room, the 9x9 office space that I painted when I was 10. I don't remember when exactly I started sleeping with the door shut, but I do remember why. At first, I would wake up and see my mum heading to the bathroom. I always found it strange that she could just get up and go back to sleep like that. She spooked me several times by peeking her head in to check up on me, but there was a time where I woke up for no reason, expecting to see my mother shuffling to the bathroom in a shirt, and instead staring into pitch black. It was as if my nightlight stopped at my door. I remember being so puzzled at first, simply thinking it was a weird way the door caught the light or something, but a sense of dread was starting to make the hairs on my neck raise. It was so unnaturally black. Didn't I used to be able to see my mother's face at the doorway? Didn't I used to see her go to the bathroom? Why can't I see the table in the hall like I usually can? The more questions I realized I didn't have answers for, the more intense the feeling of doom became. Taking a page out of my mother's book, I hid under the covers until morning. I wake up and I'm talking about it with my mum, and she tells me a story about myself that I hardly remembered. When I was really little, I refused to sleep alone in our old trailer. My mum would often come and sleep with me until she woke up to pee and would go back to her own bed. I've always been such a deep sleeper, so she knew she wouldn't wake me. This night, I wake up at 3 AM to see a person at the foot of my bed. They could have touched my mum's foot if they reached out. I remember it being this silhouette, impossibly dark. I've always had nightlights, so I have no idea how it was such a shadow. I remember I felt like I wasn't allowed to look at it, so I stared at my feet, barely taking in the figure at the edges of my vision. I touched my mother to wake her. She's a light sleeper, and she prayed with me to make it go away. I'm not religious in the traditional sense, so I have no idea why this worked. When I opened my eyes from the prayer, the entity that had been there, giving me chills for the past 10 minutes, was suddenly gone. No more shadow. I always thought I was just tripping as a kid. So when I talked to her about the shadow I had seen in our hall, the hairs on her arms stood up, and she tells me that she had seen it too. That night, when I was a child, she told me to tell it to go away in the name of God. What I didn't know is that she had seen it and stopped seeing it at the same time I had. Once I'd started sleeping with the door shut, it got weird. When I'd get home from school, my closet would be wide open. I used to be super messy, so I'd assumed that it couldn't have been just a broken latch. How would it have pushed the clothes and shoes back like that? Then it started happening at night. I'd usually wake up and see the closet wide open, pitch black. I was a little older at this point, but still, I knew better than to try and look at its face. I feel like that's just common sense at that point, if you're realistically experiencing some sort of paranormal activity. I didn't always feel the sense of dread. Sometimes it was just creepy as hell. It wasn't until I woke up one night as it was opening that I felt sick. I watched that door open to about an inch crack, nearly pissed myself. I started putting laundry baskets and piles of clothes in front of it, but it would still manage to open. I'd often just push the door to see if it had come unlatched, and the answer was almost always yes. My mum thought we traded out for a different doorknob with a lock. Then the new thing was the button being unlocked. It was one of those push-button locks that unlocks when you twist it and makes a sort of clunk noise. You can unlock it from the other side by jamming a bobby pin or something. I would wake up hearing this super specific noise and find the closet unlocked. Even stranger is when I heard this noise, yet the door was still locked. Sometimes I'd hear it twice. It made zero sense. Sometimes I'd wake up in my mum's bed, and neither of us would know how I got there. We're talking middle school era, where most tweens would rather be caught dead than sleeping in their parents' bed, and she's a light sleeper, so she would have noticed. She's had a priest literally bless our home and burns sage regularly, even though she's the most Karen person you'd ever meet. So here's the deal. The point of you knowing all of that is so you know why I wanted a Ouija board in the first place. If not for the hella dead relatives that I never got a chance to talk to, then to figure out what the hell was going on when I was a kid. So of course, I went to Spirit Halloween and blew $40 so my friend Alex and I can have a shot at it. And don't even judge me. If all that backstory was true for you too, you'd be just as curious. I had done a bunch of research at this point, trying to find out what the rules typically are, stories, guides, history, anything. But there's something weird about the search results for Ouija boards. Why are there so many cheesy magazines writing about it? Why can't I find anywhere on Reddit with current discussions on Ouija? Some people have asked, but responses are usually pretty weak. Why isn't it common knowledge that there have been Ouija boards long before America even? Why aren't more people still talking about this, even just as a party game? We've used the board 3 times now, twice yesterday, all during the day at around 2 to 3 p.m. Here are some notable things that have happened. Number 1. They originally said they were 8. They kept moving to the black next to the word goodbye, or would move to the moon on the board. When asked if it was moving to the black spaces because it was shy, it said yes. When asked if the moon meant we should do this at night, it said yes. At some point, we had gotten the giggles from smoking beforehand. My friend's boyfriend, Jay, is a skeptic and was making fun. And when we tried to apologize, the board said no. Kept talking to us for a minute though. When asked for a name, it moved to 0. When asked if they would tell us how old they are again, it said yes, then X, then 0. When asked for gender, 0. 2. The movement was originally very weak. It moved slowly to the sun, I assumed it was telling us we forgot the candle. It actually started working better once we lit a candle. It told us his name was D. It was using the in-between of yes and no as a maybe. We asked if it misses the cats. It said yes. We asked if it likes it when people are down here. It said maybe. When my friend's boyfriend, Jay, the skeptic, came home, the board said goodbye. Number 3. The LED lights started glitching, and we said goodbye to fix them quickly. When asked for age, it began slowly and steadily moving through the numbers, and I got a bad feeling it was going to go through all the numbers, so we moved it back up to the top. We tried to go through the alphabet next. This time, Alex got the bad feeling and wouldn't let it finish. K, A, T, the sun, then S. When asked for a name, D. At first, we thought Jay was messing with us because he hadn't done it with us until this reading, but we didn't tell him about the second time we had used it yet. Definitely not told him someone by D had talked to us in the basement. I came home and started noticing these black rocks everywhere. Little pocket-sized black stones in the corners of rooms. Usually I would have recognized right away they were warding stones. I like to research stuff like that, even if I don't believe it 100%, just because I like that era and enjoy the aesthetic of it all. But for some reason, I started picking up these rocks, and I had 4 of them before I remembered what they were, which is odd, not like me. I'm not trying to imply anything, but it was noticeably something I wouldn't do. Overall, I could just be crazy, maybe it's hereditary, but now I'm obsessed and researching the Ouija board and the things it can tell us. I feel like I've got a mystery that needs to be solved, and what better place to figure it out than the public internet, if there's a scientific explanation for this. We're doing another session tomorrow in my basement this time. So far, we've been doing it at Alex's house, but she's legit just texted me that her metal Guinness sign that's been hanging just fine for years fell with nothing touching it. I'm continuing this a few days later. We've had an even stronger experience with the board. I don't know how the hell to explain this, but I swear neither of us could have been messing with each other. I have a voice memo we started as soon as the board was put away. We were essentially frantic. Number 4. I spoke to my grandmother. She didn't recall where she died in her house. I asked a bunch of loaded questions such as, did you die in your bed, on the couch, on the floor? My friend would have no way of knowing that my grandmother was too high to get out of her apartment during a fire, let alone where she died. Alex's hand began dripping with sweat, as if she had condensation. I mean, there was, in the most literal terms, a puddle of sweat on the board by the end of it. There was a picture in the living room drawer, and I asked for the first letter of the child that she was with on it, and she correctly answered P for my eldest brother. We apparently spoke with my aunt and uncle, who passed away as well. When asked the first letter of what type of smokes he bought, D for decades. When asked what gas station we would always take him to, 7, and the answer was 7-Eleven. I'll skip over the rest of us verifying that we were speaking with family members with questions the other person couldn't have possibly known. When asked how many sodas were in the fridge, 12. Once we finished, we went upstairs and we counted 11 the first time, but then I found a 12th can behind the milk that my brother had hid. We both crapped ourselves. I wish I could remember fuller details, but we were absolutely rattled. I don't know if you've ever experienced something you can't explain, but it is the most unsettling phenomenon. She had work, so left, but later, as I left for her house to talk about all of this crazy stuff, my lights rapidly flickered for a whole second. I could hear the ting on the glass of filament breaking, like when a light bulb goes out, but it didn't go out. I thought nothing of it as I was leaving, but I had left my keys, and when I re-entered the room, the same thing happened. I had a wild thought that this could be paranormal. I said, if that's you, do it again. The light went out for a second, then on, then flickered. I nearly pissed myself. My mum came out of her room, and as I heard her door opening, it flickered subtly and stopped flickering altogether. This lamp is now permanently unplugged. Alex didn't want the board in her house, and I had nowhere else to hide it from my mother than under the couch in the basement, so last night was the first night I spent with it in my house. I didn't sleep until the sun came up. I couldn't. I was wide awake for some reason. Here's what happened. 1 a.m. I got home and the dog wouldn't go out. 2 a.m. Grabbed a soda. Our fridge is next to the basement stairs. I could have sworn I saw something in the door crack, movement on the landing of the stairs. Spent the next couple of minutes opening and closing the door. 3 a.m. My digital alarm clock had to have turned off and on at some point because the time had reset to 12 a.m. I didn't even realize it until 3 was almost over. Around 2:30, I had started to ignore the clock so I could live in ignorance. When I realized 3 was over, the clock's time meant it shut off and on around 3:30. 4 a.m. I never have to pee in the night, but I guess I drank a lot of water. I have a rescue dog that never leaves my side. Even when I'm manic and up at 5 a.m, he'll sit outside the bathroom door and wait to walk back with me. Tonight, he was awake but wouldn't budge. Extremely unsettling, but I believe that fear feeds the activity, so I chose to go to the bathroom anyway. You know that feeling you get when you know someone's about to rush past you in a hallway or about to step on the heel of your shoe? Imagine that feeling, but dipped in dread. That's the only way I can describe my walk back from the bathroom. I knew if I just looked, I could put myself at ease, but I could not bring myself to do it. Looking back, I remember feeling like it wasn't worth it to risk a look, but that doesn't make much sense to me now. I came back in the room, and my dog was sitting straight up on my bed, no wagging to see me, no wiggles, just sat there until I was like, "Buddy, dude?" and he laid back down. The rest of the night was uneventful, and I couldn't get a wink's sleep until I saw the sun through my blinds. I don't know what to do with this board. I don't know if I should get rid of it, give it away, donate it, but part of me wants to take this as an opportunity to understand something greater than myself. I know that almost every religion recognizes Ouija, but does not think it's a good thing, which has to mean, on some level, this has to be real. I've read a lot about other people becoming obsessed with it and truly going crazy, and I low-key want to delve into this. I want to understand it and how it works and why. Maybe it's hereditary. I want to know how the hell all this has happened.